Quick introduction for Michael. Michael is Global Vice President of Partner Solutions at SAP. Michael runs the entire GSSP program, which is SAP's Global System Integrator program. World's largest. I mean, it's a huge program with a lot of big partners that we all know and love, right? Accenture, Deloitte, Infosys, all of the big players. So welcome, Michael, and I'm going to let you guys take it away from here.
Thanks. It's great to be here, but I do want to. I don't run the whole program, so but I've got responsibility on how we go to market with our largest systems integrator. So I'll take that piece of it, but not necessarily the entire program. But thanks for the promotion.
Okay. Awesome. Good. I'll let you guys go.
All right.
Thank you, Chip.
Yep.
So Amit, I didn't raise my hand or anything because I was scared to death if I touched my iPad, I would disconnect myself. But I'll give you applause too. I thought that was a great presentation. Enjoyed it.
Thank you, Mike. Thank you. Totally inspired by you and the team at SAP. But before we go further, Chip described your role from a high level. But kind of take us a little bit more into your shoes. Tell a little bit more about yourself and your role at SAP. And how do you keep the trains running on time?
Sure. So I like to say that I don't know that I necessarily keep the trains running on time, but I do feel like we make a lot of sausage. So a little bit of background about me. I like to tell people I'm a sales guy. When I graduated from college, my first job was at a company where I was part of a college new hire program, and went into a pretty extensive sales training program. And for the majority of my career, I moved up the sales ranks. And it was at a point in time when I was asked to take on a new responsibility for a hardware company I was working for, that they recognized the fact that systems integrators played a pretty significant role in the decisions that our customers were making. And so I had an opportunity to kind of get in on the ground floor working with a large global systems integrator. And from that point on, I had some sort of a role that involved a partner, or I worked for a partner. So I worked for a large global integrator for a while. But I've been at SAP for, it'll be 13 years next month. And during that entire 13 years, I've been involved in the ecosystem. I spent the first half of that time in the North America operation, and the most recent years have been in the global operation, primarily focused in this role of working with our global systems integrators. So we've got, from a structure perspective, we have resources that sit in the field who work with our global systems integrators on how we execute with them at a field level. But at a global level, we have partner business managers who manage those relationships globally. And their job is to ensure that there's appropriate alignment between SAP and those partners, how we go to market together, how we invest together. I've got a team of resources that work across all of those business partners and across all of the various lines of businesses that also work with those business partners to ensure that we've got the right alignment on how we go to market together. As a part of that, I kind of picked up this operations part of the business, and that's sort of the making of the sausage. We kind of realized early on that while we felt like we were doing a lot of really good stuff, we didn't have an effective way to really track and measure what it was we were doing. And I teased one of the gentlemen on my team about a day that I asked him a question, and he responded, "I used to write a little SQL code. I think I can figure this out." He rues the day that he ever said that. But it started with the idea of, if we're doing good stuff, we need to be able to demonstrate that we're doing good stuff and be able to identify whether the work that we're doing is having an impact on the business where we want it to have an impact. And so that ended up falling underneath of my domain. And then ultimately the decision to implement WorkSpan and to deploy the WorkSpan ultimately became my responsibility as well, at least as it related to what we were doing with our global systems integrators. The audience will hear from Tom Roberts. It's interesting because Tom and I know each other for a very long time. I used to manage the third-party software business in North America. So Tom had done some things with how he was managing his business that we took advantage of. And then we ended up finding ourselves together with how we could leverage WorkSpan to take what we were doing to the next level.
Wow, you have internal partnership as well. I can see that.
Absolutely.
So, Mike, if you could take what your team and the larger community of SAP partner business managers and global partner business managers do on a day-to-day basis, can you connect it to the overall SAP vision about ecosystems? Why is it so important to do this?
Yeah. So, I think it's interesting. I think as I communicate with, or I communicate about some of our partner business managers and a specific partner, it occurs to me that we have a handful of people that manage the largest, most strategic relationships that exist in the software industry. And as I tie that back to what we do as a company, and I see the impact that those partnerships have on our business, you come to the fundamental conclusion that SAP and our business partners are very much joined together. So it's not like SAP is just functioning and our partners are just functioning. While some of that does happen, the trick is to figure out how you close that gap in between. And I sort of look at SAP like we are this, many years ago, I had the opportunity to go out to the Great Barrier Reef. And we got on this stainless steel catamaran powerboat. It was called Quicksilver. And when that boat went through the water, it was phenomenal. It was fast, it was smooth. And I kind of think about SAP that way. But when we do that, we create a huge wake. And those partners kind of come in behind that. We generate a lot of revenue for ourselves. We generate a lot of revenue for our partners. Our partners have built businesses that are built on services and built on being the trusted advisor to our company, to our customers. All of that plays together. So it's not unusual that when you go to a major SAP event like Sapphire, partners are involved in that communication. Partners are all over the floor. They're making huge investments into what goes on at Sapphire. They're making huge investments into what goes on with our customers and the success that our customers have. It's very, very much joined together. So I would say that business partners are part of SAP's fabric. It's fundamental to what we do. It's fundamental to how we go to business. Whether it's working with our largest customers or it's working with our smallest customers, partners play a significant role in that. It's not independent. It's very much woven together.
Well said, well said. And Mike, if I can get your feedback on this point, why, we can always get the physical aspect of, people forming these partnerships and running on spreadsheets and your own CRM system. You and Tom made the decision to build a digital partnering capability. Why was, digital partnering important for you in your business?
Yeah, so for me personally, and I know Tom can relate to this, and I think back to some of the things that Tom and I would sit down together and commiserate about what we were trying to do with the software business, and it applied very much to what we do with our large integrators as well. I sort of sit back and I come to the realization that most of our resources in the field, I've done their job. Whether it was a partner business manager working in a region, or it's a partner business manager managing one of our global business partners, I've sat in their seat. And I understand what the challenges are. For years and years and years, we basically have managed these businesses using spreadsheets and PowerPoint slides. And while we found a way to be effective, it clearly was not the most effective way to go do it. So even if I go back to before we deployed WorkSpan, we started to understand the fact that we needed to provide our partner business managers better insight as to what was going on with their business. With WorkSpan, what we recognized was that we could take that to another level. And so what I wanted to be able to do was to put myself in the position that I used to be in with each one of these partner business managers and say, how could I have made my job easier? What would I have liked to have had? Because back then we didn't have those tools. But today we've got those tools. So we've migrated from living in a world of spreadsheets to living in a world of digitalization, where we can actually automate the business processes that we weren't able to automate before. I think it's that recognizing the fact that we can take a process from end to end, we can document it, and we can provide people a tool from the conception of a solution that we want to take to market together, all the way to taking it to market and tracking and measuring whether we're having mutual success that ultimately drives towards a happy customer. I would say that that's probably the key thing for me. It was being able to provide our resources in the field tools that they could utilize to make their job easier to do, because they have a hard job. If managing partnerships is not an easy thing to do. I think anybody who hasn't done it before, any thoughts that you have around how easy that job is, trust me, it's a lot more challenging and a lot more difficult than you can possibly imagine. And by not providing our resources good tools, we basically tie their hands behind their back. What we want to do is free them up. We want to free them up so that they can do things that are more strategic to the business and not have to respond to things in a tactical basis because they're trying to manage and juggle spreadsheets and PowerPoint slides and those kinds of things. If we can make that simpler, we can make them more effective in their job, and we can allow them to focus on the things that are most important in the business.
Absolutely, absolutely. And Mike, could you illustrate some best practices or next practices? Obviously, going from where you were before to where you are now, you also invented a few things in terms of processes for the company that streamlined things a little bit. Can you give some insight as to what those innovations were?
Yeah, so I would actually go back to maybe even 5 years ago when I first joined this team. A group of us had what I thought was, in hindsight, a very, very memorable conversation when it came to our business partners, when we talked about how do we track and measure success. And I think one of the key questions that we answered was, do we want to track and measure everything that people do? Or are we most interested in understanding whether us and our business partners are investing in those things that are most strategic to the business? That was a fundamental shift. And so in what we did in implementing WorkSpan was to ensure that we had a vehicle that allowed us to go focus on those things that are most strategic to the business. So when I kind of look at it as a best practice, we just didn't throw everything at it. What we said was, S/4HANA is really important. Success factors is really important. I can go down the list of the things that are really, really important that we're investing in, our partners are investing in. Let's ensure that we're investing together and we can demonstrate the growth in those areas. So I would say that focusing on those things that are most strategic to the business, number one. Number two is the investment we made working with our lines of business. So it's not just the partner business manager that's managing the partner relationship, it's the partner business manager that's working inside of the line of business. And it's driving that internal collaboration by having a level of focus across a line of business. It's not just about what's in the pipeline, but it's the work that needs to be done to put things into the pipeline. The big knock against partnerships is, yeah, but we would have known about it anyway. Well, the reality is, especially in those cases, also in the profit to even be a forecastable or a pipeline opportunity. It's the ability to leverage a tool like WorkSpan that we can identify what are those 20 targets, what are those 30 targets, and let's document the collaboration that we have so that nobody could ever say, well, they didn't really play that significant role. You know what, I can go back 18, 24 months ago when we had the very first conversation, and I have everything documented as far as the plan that we put into place, the updates on that plan, and how we executed against that. It's building solutions. And it's like, we partners have services that sit on top of what we do, but many times those services provide something that's truly unique. And quite frankly, that's the way that partners can differentiate themselves from one another. So it's about being able to track a specific solution that we take to market and how effective has that solution been. And that, I think, as we move forward, will become even more important as the business changes and we look for things to incubate in the market. Because a lot of times what we do is we take something, we sort of throw it over the fence and think it's just going to work. And then we wonder why it didn't. We have to incubate things. We have to get things started, identify and find and close that first 2 or 3 or 4 customers, demonstrate how it works, and then transition it more into the mainstream. I think the other thing is to recognize the fact that not every deal just has one partner involved in it. In many instances, it's multiple partners that are supporting something. As I said before, that Quicksilver analogy, we create a big wake. And when we create that wake for a customer that's making a really, really big decision, lots of partners get in, lots of them are influencing. The customer is making that decision. It's not about just one, it's about multiples. And then in other cases, like Embrace, as you highlighted before, people can go back and they can see the announcement that we made at the end of Q3 with Azure. But here's an example of where you have SAP, you have Azure, and you have a global integrator, 3 partners that are all working together in order to help a customer solve a specific challenge that they've got with how they want to operate their business. And then I guess probably the final thought would be, and I look at the work that your team has done working with our IT operation around integrating into existing SAP tools and products. So it's that integration that we've done with the SAP CRM system so that we ensure that we've got not real-time, but near real-time information so that our business partners can, both internally and externally, can see what's happening with opportunities on an almost real-time basis. So providing that integration is absolutely critical because it means that we can provide information on a more real-time basis.
Fantastic. What a great set of next best practices for all of us to look. We'll publish more material on this so that everybody can take a look. But you've managed a very large scale change, 750 sales plans, hundreds of partners, I think 20,000 plus opportunities worldwide, a lot of people involved in this. How did you manage this change? This is significant, right?
So I made a comment early on that I'm a sales guy. And I think back to early in my career, I took a course that was called Power-Based Selling. And in Power-Based Selling, the thing that they teach you at an account is to identify the fox. There's a fox inside of your account somewhere. And that fox is not necessarily the decision maker, but it's that person who can provide you all the insights that you need to ensure that you can be successful with whatever it is you're trying to sell the customer. While we didn't necessarily call people the fox, what we did do is we identified champions. So we found people that were inside of a region, inside of a line of business that we knew had a desire, had an interest in the kinds of things that we were doing with deploying this. And we embraced them as a part of the process. Now, I'm not going to tell you we did that necessarily as effectively in the very beginning, but as we went along, we figured that out. And we even took a little bit of a pause, as you know, on a couple of things that we did, and we incorporated them more closely into what we did. If I'd done anything differently, we might have identified that a little earlier on. But I think that identifying those champions was absolutely critical to the success that we've seen. The other thing is communication. It's making sure that we're driving out communication, we're letting people know what we're doing. It's, anytime we sit down and we learn how to use something new, I don't know what the numbers are, but there's some percentage of it we just forget. It's making it easy for people to access stuff. It's the way that we've put enablement inside of the WorkSpan tool. It's not about sitting through 30 minutes of enablement, it's sitting through two minutes of how do I go do something. Because chances are people didn't forget the 20 or 30 minutes that we educated them on. It was something we showed them how to go do, and they didn't remember how to do it. Let's allow them to come into the system and watch that 2 minutes that says, aha, that's what I did wrong. I needed to click this or I needed to do that. And to be able to make that communication the way that we provide that enablement to make it easier for them to digest it. And then I would say probably the third thing is really around collaboration. It's how we collaborate internally, but it's also how we collaborate externally with the business partners.
That's great. We talked a little bit about the economic situation around coronavirus and the health situation around it and the lack of travel and the social measures we need to keep the distance, if you will. You built a digital muscle before all this happened. So can you talk a little bit more about how the ecosystem collaboration is going to shape given the current environment that we are in?
Yeah, so, I mean, I guess I'm glad that we've done what we've done with you already. I would suggest to anybody who's evaluating it based upon what's going on in our world today, now is not the time to pause. Now's the time to act. I know that a lot of customers will make decisions to acquire application solution and implement them during economic downturns because they see things as maybe a little bit slower and it's easier to go do it. I would submit to you that part of the reason why we're seeing the decisions that are necessary today, travel bans, my goodness gracious, yesterday, I'm supposed to take tomorrow off and I'm going to the Players Championship. Guess what? I'm not going. PGA Tour will function and will have their event, but with no spectators. So my plans for my day off tomorrow completely changed. Major League Baseball has postponed spring training. The NBA has postponed their season. If this whole Corona thing has taught us anything, it's that we're not prepared. And we need to be prepared. We need to be prepared to make it easier to drive collaboration. Yeah, we can pick up the phone and we can talk to each other. But if we can digitize that collaboration, it's going to make it that much more effective. I mean, collaboration shouldn't be something that only functions during the 8 or 12 hours that you work during the day, because we work globally. I look at people that work for me in California and people that work for me in Australia and how we need to manage that time. We're global organizations. We're global partnerships. We need to be able to collaborate while one group of people is asleep. Somebody else should be able to collaborate with us in WorkSpan so that we get up in the morning, we can see what it was that they did. So my response to that is not being prepared has put us as a planet in the situation that we're in. Let's get prepared for how we want to go digitize this business so we can get out ahead of these things so that when we have ebb and flows as it relates to the economy or whatever it is that gets in our way, we've taken the right decisions, we've taken the course of action early on so that we're prepared for these things. So my thing is, I'm glad we've already done it. And for somebody who hasn't done it, now's not the time to pause, now's the time to act.
Thank you, Mike. That made perfect sense. And lastly, there are a lot of audience questions coming in. Please keep them rolling. We're going to ask them right now. While you write your questions, I'd love to ask you one last question, Mike.
Sure.
What's next on your agenda? Where are you headed?
You know, I think that, you know, we want to drive more partners so that we have more collaboration across multiple partners. I think Embrace is a great example. I think we want to do more of that. We want to obviously drive more adoption. And when I talk about that, while we've got adoption across all of our lines of business, we still have some more work to do from a regional perspective. But what I also want to see happen is go beyond just what we're doing with the set of partners that we're managing the system, but proliferate that more. And then I think anything that we can do that further automates processes. You know, how do we make it easier for a partner business manager to do their job? If we can do it in 2 clicks rather than 6 clicks, if we can do it as an automated process as opposed to a manual process, those are the kinds of things that I think we need to continue to focus on more. And then I think from a bigger picture perspective, so much of our focus at this stage of the game has been pre-pipeline and pipeline. It's to begin to look at what happens between us and the partner and the customer post deal close.
Wow.
And so that's something that we barely scratched the surface on. It's something that I believe we have a terrific opportunity to do a much better job at and to have a significant impact on.
That's a terrific foundation to actually build that on. Chip, I believe we have a lot of questions. So can I give you the floor to ask the questions, please?
Yeah, we do have a lot of questions. So Mike, awesome presentation, conversation, and insights, especially around golf.
Is that what you took away, Chip?
So Chip, since I can't go to the tournament and I was taking the day off, decided I'm going to play golf tomorrow instead.
There you go. That's a good plan. That's an awesome plan B, right? Good. So actually a few questions. Also a comment that I thought I'd share as well. Subhajit Roy, Subhajit, hi, with Tech Mahindra. So Subhajit says, great point, Mike. The planning and smallest of actions early on in the process can and will determine how the opportunity matures, can make all the difference to determine who was the more strategic partner or more critical to the win. So I thought that was just, you know, piling on your comments. So that was just.
Yes, great comment, great comment. Thank you very much for that.
Yeah. Good. So question from Matt Gale. So Matt says, love your insights, Mike. Love that you're a sales guy. Love power-based selling. Curious about your thoughts on how and if you've tied WorkSpan / Alliance Excellence to the broader company strategy.
Well, so I think you have to start someplace. And so we've started someplace with what you're going to hear about what Tom's done, what we've done within our organization, what we're doing with Embrace. So my hope and our desire is that there are other areas that we'll be able to take WorkSpan and further deploy it to address other sets of partners and other business challenges that we've got. I obviously can't share specifics on that. But I think it's suffice it to say that a lot of people are paying attention to what it is that we're doing, and we welcome the opportunity to be able to proliferate the solution to a broader audience.
That's great, great. Another question from Tracy Miller. How have you encouraged partners to come on board with WorkSpan? Okay,
so it was Tracy?
Tracy, yeah.
Tracy. Okay, so Tracy, we made a decision early on. I think it was fairly early on in the implementation, I guess. Number one, we weren't going to bring partners on as a part of our initial rollout. It would just be internal. And then as we brought partners on, the term that I have always said to people is, I don't want to throw a blanket over a partner. So in other words, I don't want to take a partner and say, hey, guess what? You now have access to WorkSpan, and just say, who wants access to it? That wasn't going to be our strategy and approach. When I talked about best practices and focusing on priorities and what was strategic to the business, what we've done with our partner business managers is we've identified with a specific partner, is there a specific go-to-market motion that we want to invite the partner to participate and collaborate with us? Again, you just can't throw it over the fence. The analogy that I use, I'm an American, I grew up playing baseball. Breaks my heart that spring training is being postponed. But you know, you have to have somebody to play catch with. So when the pitcher throws the ball, if there's not somebody to catch it and throw it back, it makes collaboration difficult. So by focusing with our partners in a specific go-to-market motion, we need to identify with the partner who is going to be or who will be the collaborators on the partner side and who are the collaborators on the SAP side, so we can make sure that that interaction is truly a collaborative interaction that goes both ways. So again, our strategy has been, let's just not give it to everybody. Let's get very specific about where we go do it. Let's focus on those things that are most strategic to the relationship, and then let's make sure we identify the resources who are going to collaborate together.
It's terrific, terrific. One other question from Victor Sanchez. Victor, describe a scenario where you have multiple partners working together.
Well, I think the best scenario is obviously, you know, the Embrace scenario. And again, I invite you to go back and end of Q3, the announcement that we made with Microsoft and what we're doing with them from a hyperscaler perspective. And our movement for customers from ECC to S/4HANA, leveraging our Embrace program, deploying that on the Azure environment. So as a part of that, a global integrator plays a role in a reference architecture so that we ensure that when we make that move from ECC to S/4HANA, that that's being managed appropriately as regarding all the different services that are required. All the industry capabilities are moved over with that, and that customer is seeing benefit from that move to S/4HANA. it's not just SAP, it's not just Azure. The system integrator plays a critical role in ensuring that that migration, both from a system perspective as well as the business process perspective, is all done in concert with one another. So I can't, I mean, to me, that's just a great example because it takes all three of us in order to go do that. So it's Azure, it's SAP, it's the system integrator in collaboration with one another. And in this particular scenario, it's under the Embrace program.
Terrific. Great. Amit, I'll turn it back to you. Mike, this has been fantastic. Really appreciate your time. And Amit, do you want to?
Yeah, no, Mike, thank you so much for your insights. Love the journey with you so far and the guidance that you gave the overall team in terms of driving this change and transformation has been a great partnership between us. So the balls you threw, we are trying to catch.
It's been a great ride. I've enjoyed it. My only disappointment is we're all not sitting in our Hudson Yards office, but when everything settles back down and we get things back to normal, we make sure we have everybody back in the Hudson Yards and we'll be able to do this face to face.
Yes, and let's transition to the next session, Chip.
Thank you.